Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. I hope everybody is well, and I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. It looks like we might have a bit of a lively chat tonight. There was quite a few people waiting to get in, which is always nice to see. I was just looking there. I think it said there was 28 people waiting to come into the chat there, and I was thinking back to when I first started doing these live streams, probably about 18 months ago, when I was looking if I got kind of 20 people in the chat all night kind of thing. So yeah, nice to see a nice crowd tonight. So let's have a look and see who we've got in the chat this evening. We have Andy Smith in, nice and early. Good evening, Andy. We've got Richard Stockdale in. Good evening, buddy. Hope you're well after your weekend. Steve Evans is in as well. Evening, Steve. We have, I'm going to butcher your name here and I apologise. Is it Tua Son of Hua? It says Eop. I apologise for butchering that, but thanks for joining the chat. We've got Kyle in tonight as well. Good evening, Kyle. Hope you're well, mate. Hope your trip to London was fun. I know it was really, really hot, mate, so I hope you enjoyed it. We got Christian in as well. Good evening, Christian. He says, I hope you all had a good weekend. I did. We'll have a bit chat about weekends and that, I suppose, now. Richard says, banging weekend at the Walking Dead tournament. Yeah, so for those interested in the Walking Dead All Out War, there was the Weight of Fire event at the weekend, ran by Mr. Paul Welsh, which was fantastically attended. Unfortunately, a bit of a last-minute change of plans for me meant I couldn't get there when I did plan to be. But yeah, I think Richard, I think I'm right in saying that you won the event. You certainly were on top table at the end. Then I'm sure I read you'd won it. But then when you say something, you think, "Oh, what if you came second? I'd be gutted then." But yeah, hope you had a good weekend, mate. Skullmunch is in. Says, "What's up? Good evening, Skullmunch. How you doing, Sean?" Hal's in as well. Good evening, Hal. Busy chat tonight. It's just jumped on top of my screen there. Steve Evans says he is having Kings of War all weekend at the Southwest Clash tournament down in Bristol. 5 cracking games against 5 opponents. 5 great opponents, I should say. 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. Not bad, mate. 50-50. That's pretty good, isn't it? Paul Palms is in as well. Good evening, Paul. How are you doing, fella? Well, so we know. He says hello to the Monday Night Massive. I quite like that, the Monday Night Massive. VJ's in as well, says morning all. Good morning, VJ. Thanks for joining us again. Christopher's in as well. Good evening, good afternoon. I always forget what time zone you're on, Christopher. I know it's not good evening. At least I don't think it is. Thanks for joining us, buddy. We've got Duffy Makowski in. I think that's the first time you've been in, Duffy. It says let's boogie. Thanks for joining the chat tonight. Yeah, Richard said he may have won. We've got Different Gear TV in as well. Good evening, Busey. How are you doing, my friend? He says, good to see you survive the UK heatwave. Still pretty hot now, mate, to be fair. I've still got the window open, letting a bit of air in because it gets a bit warm in here. We've got, let's have a look. We've got Top Table Gaming Steve's in this night. I get my words out. Top Table Gaming Steve's in tonight as well. Good evening, buddy. How are you doing? Flying Mammal's in. Has a little wave there and says, here's everyone. Might head off soon. Sorry. Well, thanks for coming in anyway, Ruth. And I saw the pictures from the Comic-Con at the weekend. Looks like you had an awesome time. So yeah, I'm glad the cosplay went well. Sam Goose is in as well. Whatever he said's been retracted, but good evening, Sam Goose. Tim's in as well. He says, greetings from Travel Lodge in Taunton. Tim, always the Monday night hotel buddy. How you doing? Matt Mountain's in as well. It says, hashtag Manic Monday, BlackJackers. How we all doing? I'm not too bad, fella. Thanks very much. We've got Ron Roloff, says, hey, good evening, Ron. How are you doing? We've got David in as well. Hello, David. We quite often have a brief chat in the Facebook group, so thanks for coming in. He's got 3 games of Warcry this weekend. It was awesome. No doubt we'll hear more about that then, mate. It'd be good to hear what you think. Blizzaz is in as well. Says, I'm here to spill all the paint. Good evening, Blizz. We've got Dice Tales. Good evening, Mark. How are you doing? Kerry Rivers is in as well. Says evening from Wales. Good evening, Kerry. Hope you're well. Flip Movie Maker's in from Canada. We've got Kirill in as well, all the way. I'm sure you're Russia, Kirill. Is that right? Yeah. Says hello, Legacy people. Alan Cluley's in as well. Says he's looking for his first Warcry game on Friday. Yeah, not long to wait now, boys, is it? Not long to wait. Antonio's in as well. Says hello from Portugal. We've got the United Nations in tonight. That's not too bad, is it? Krista says he's looking forward to today's conversation, trying to figure out if I should buy non-part or all of Warcry. Well, tonight's conversation, I'll kind of sort of briefly go over what the topic is tonight. So the topic is, is basically game balance is a myth. And that's obviously a bit of a provoking title, but I'll give you the background as to, when we get onto the chat, as to why I think that game balance, certainly being kind of 100% balanced, is almost a myth. And not only can we not have it, we don't really want it. And it came about because of a conversation in the Warcry forums on Facebook. Forums, there's a plus on the plus. The Warcry pages on Facebook, about people saying, is the game balanced? And then there's some people saying, well, we don't know. It's not out yet. Nobody's played enough games of it. Other people saying, well, it's a Games Workshop game, so of course it's not balanced. And there was a real kind of, I think it was like 80, 90 kind of comments in this thread about game balance. And it really kind of made me think about balance within Warcry and my experiences with it so far. And actually, what do I really want from it when it comes to the balance? And that kind of led me onto this thought of I think striving for balance and game balance is probably a myth. And I'll come on to that in a little bit as well. So, I've just had a little email pop up there as well from Alan Rogerson that says he's just become one of my Patreons. I don't know if it'll pop up on the screen. It might do in a bit, but thank you very much, Alan, if you're watching. Where we are. Jack Crossley's in as well from Bristol. Good evening, Jack. Peter Nicholas is in, says, phew, made it. Got my snacks. You in for the long haul, mate, then, Christopher Warden's -6 hours, so it's good early evening. That's probably the best way. We've got Douglas in as well. Good evening, Reluctant Arty. Tabletop Battlezone's in as well. It says the anticipation to Warcry is horrible. I think there's a bit of a mixed anticipation for Warcry. Whenever I speak about Warcry, I lose a load of subscribers because I obviously have people who subscribe to me that are not interested in Warcry. So I lose a chunk of subscribers whenever I mention Warcry. And then I gain a chunk of people who are interested in Warcry. So I'm sorry to say to those people, but Warcry will be featured on the channel. So if you're interested in Warcry, you've come to the right place. If you're not interested in Warcry, hopefully there's still enough there that kind of keeps you interested. But hey ho, that's the way of the world. We've got Gene in as well there, Horrid Person. Good evening, buddy. We've got JJ, says good afternoon from Texas. I'm not even going to say what Sam said there, but that's your choice, buddy. David says the only bad thing about Warcry is the withdrawal shakes you get when you stop playing. Craig Lowther's in as well. Good evening, mate. Eldhaler, is it? Eldhaler, I hope that's right there, from Poland. Welcome to the chat as well. Sean says need to convince Ruth on how great Warcry is. She's not on board yet, and he's gone balls deep with pre-orders. We'll do a bit as that as the night goes on as well, no doubt. Douglas has seen his wife had a fit when he told her I needed 2 more factions. Yeah, so I think we'll touch on that tonight as well. The fact that the new factions and the new terrain sort of release, the new board and new terrain's it's going to go for pre-order. I think this weekend, the same weekend. I think it's this weekend. So we're going to go and collect all of our stuff and then pre-order all the next lot of stuff as well. Where we had Stuart Craven's in from Dorset. Good evening, Stuart. Let's have a look. Flip Movie Makers over in Calgary in Alberta. 2 Hours says he hasn't broken the news to his wife yet how financially deep he's into Warcry. He just ordered Cyberlords this morning. Yes, I feel that pain, mate. Sam H is in as well from Bristol. Good evening, buddy. He says, be interesting to hear what makes Warcry more interesting than other GW skirmish games. I've got a video in the works on that, mate, so I'll touch on it tonight, but I've got a video that should be up this week about that. Peter says, I like being here, Warcry or no Warcry, the snacks are good. Yeah, and Skullmunch says, the snacks are disappointing and no BJ cake. Yeah, we said we're going to have cake, didn't we, when I hit 5,000 subscribers, which I did last Thursday, I think. I hit 5,000 subscribers. So thank you to every single one of you. Top Table Gaming is saying, great to have more Warcry and chat in the background while I make Jay look good editing his bat rep. Yeah, Steve, those bat reps are off the chart, mate, at the minute. Looking really, really good. Don't worry about them, mate. VJ says, not sure what's worse, toxic GW neckbeards or GW hating neckbeards. I think I'm seeing it from both sides at the minute because I'm getting a little bit of kind of, not grief I would say, but a a little bit of backlash about doing some GW stuff for a change, and this channel's always been about the stuff that I'm enjoying. So if I'm enjoying something, you're going to see it. So that's kind of how it is. Yes, Genius, I think you did right with your topic. Sure, you have Warcry featuring, but the issue of balance is a wider one. And that's pretty much it, to be fair, Gene. It doesn't just touch on Warcry. This topic has been generated because of Warcry and because of what I've read, but it definitely factors into every single tabletop game as well. 2 Plus Tough is in as well, says congrats. Thank you very much, 2 Plus Tough. Very kind of you to say so. Yeah, so Johnny Jumbo Jumbo just snuck in there as well. I'm going to get on, good evening, buddy. I'm going to get onto the topic now as well because I don't want to spend too much time going through the chat at this stage. Again, as always, if you want to kind of message me directly, please at BlackJack Legacy. It kind of highlights it on the screen and I can see that particular chat, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves as well. And Christian's saying there as well, games are balanced as they can be for the most part, but you can't really have a true balanced game when you're leaving actions up to fate with dice rolls. Yes, that's true. And then just also sneaking on before we move on, we've got Hendrix come in as well. Jason Collins is listening on the way home from work. And Aggression says, evening from Teesside. Good evening to all of you. So yes, tonight's chat is about that basically balance is a myth. Now what I mean by that is that we can have complete balance in a war game. So if you take Warcry as an example, if Games Workshop had released one faction with one list and said, that's all that's coming out, but it's perfectly balanced. So no matter what I've got is exactly as the same as what my opponent's got, and it is symmetrical deployment, symmetrical terrain. The game is about as balanced as it can be at that point because we both have exactly the same abilities, exactly the same models, exactly the same list. But we don't really want that, do we? That's not very interesting. It's not very fun. It's not thematically very interesting. We don't really get to do the list building side of things that some people enjoy. We don't really get to do the kind of choosing your individual warbands that people like to do. You can't sculpt a kind of a story around it. It's essentially chess on a tabletop. Well, chess is on a tabletop, but it's essentially chess in a war game because we have exactly the same models and they're all set up the same. And even then, at that stage, where it is as balanced as it can be from the off, as soon as somebody moves, the balance kind of shifts a little bit because then it's somebody has to go first, for example. Somebody has to go last. Somebody gets to do that second action. If one person knows more than another, there's a slight imbalance. So in reality, I personally don't think we really want total balance. What we want is the illusion of balance. We want the concept of the game being balanced. We want to come away from the game thinking that both players had a good time, first and foremost, and that they enjoyed the game. Because I think there's more to that, and I'll come on to that in a bit. Both players enjoyed the game, and they both felt that they had the opportunity to win the game. So I think what I'm kind of saying is that it's basically that perfect balance doesn't exist within wargaming, and we don't really want it to exist. We want that little bit of kind of sometimes having a bit of an uphill struggle. You know, I've heard your army's top tier. I'm going to give my go against it and really try and kind of defeat you. And if I defeat you, then I'm the better player because I've taken a weaker army and I've battled and I've won. So there's that element to it as well. The other side as well is that for all I'm saying, kind of balance is a myth, and we don't really want it. You can screw up a game massively by introducing imbalance. So you can throw a spanner in the works. You can completely overpower, sort of underpower an army. You can completely put too much power into one particular faction. You can screw up the way that sort of games are played by terrain or deployment favors one kind of army, or so if you've got an army that has lots and lots of models and the terrain is very densely packed together, it's going to be very difficult for you to play. So imbalance can screw a game, and that's where I think the having fun side of it comes into it. That if you come away from that game not enjoying it because you feel that you've had a negative play experience, then the balance is kind of irrelevant. Is it imbalance that's driven you to be to have that negative experience, or is it just the fact that this game wasn't for you kind of thing. Maybe the rules weren't your kind of thing. So there's a few things in there. And that basically, so if I boil this one back to Warcry, for example, people asking, is the game balanced? There's a few things that's kind of cropped up at the minute. So people are saying initially, is it just balanced? And from what I'm seeing at the minute, the 2 warbands that are in the box, I seem to be seeing games are swinging one way or the other. It's not like the Iron Golems are winning every game. It's not like the Untamed Beasts are winning every game. What Warcry does very differently to most other skirmish games, and to come on to a point that's just been mentioned there, is it throws into the mix that you pick your list, you pick your faction, and you put them together, you come to 1,000 points, and then you've no idea what you're going to face on the table. Not from an opponent point of view, but from a terrain features or from a win condition. So you'll have that army. You don't know what the terrain's going to look like. You don't know how you're deploying. You don't know what the actual condition to win is. Do I need a fast-moving army to try and grab things and get them off the board? Do I need a powerful army because I have to defeat the enemy? Do I have to hold somebody off? Do I have to capture beasts? All these different kind of things. You also then throw into the mix the fact that we've got the altar deployment as well. So you have the dagger, the shield, and the hammer deployment. And you have to decide which models go into which of those different detachments at the start of the game. It's not until you then draw the deployment and the terrain cards that will tell you at what point each of those come on. So this also introduces some kind of imbalance depending upon how you structured that up. So I think Games Workshop have been quite clever with this, actually. Of all of the games that they've made, this is the one where perfectly balancing out the war bands is not necessarily the priority. It's preferable to try and do as much as you can to not not to imbalance the game and not to screw it up from the offset. But there's so much variation in the game. I mean, I was starting to watch the latest Stormcast episode tonight, the podcast that GW do with Sam Pearson. And he said that between the 4 different cards for setting up your terrain, your twists, those things, there's over, I think he said, off the top of my head, there's over 14 million combinations of those 4 cards from each of the 36 card decks. So if you build all of that in, the balance between the war bands becomes slightly less important. So whilst we strive for balance, and I think what we're really striving for, what we're really trying to achieve, is the illusion of balance. The feeling that when you play that game, you don't feel defeated before you start, and you leave that game, win or lose, feeling that you had a fun time, you had a positive experience, that you had a chance to win, and I guess more importantly, you want to play again as well. So let's have a quick look in the chat and see if there's anything in there that I need to catch up on before I move on. VG is saying exactly, just do what you dig, mate. I've mainly been a GW person, but you exposed me to considering a bunch of other companies and systems. Yeah, I think as I mentioned last week, I'm not in here to try and sell any game systems. My videos will be best when I'm excited about the game I'm playing. There's no point me trying to kind of put a brave face on and say nice things about something that I don't feel that about. So I will always talk about the stuff that I'm excited for, the stuff that I'm looking forward to, and the stuff that I'm playing. And at the minute, Warcry is certainly on that list. Aggression is saying there, asymmetrical is the name of the game. Yeah, that's the other side of it as well, and it was something I wanted to touch on, and I'll touch on it now because of what you said there. Some games are not designed to be balanced. Some games are designed. I'll take the Walking Dead All Out War as an example. So because we talked about it in the chat there as well, because there was a tournament at the weekend. So I think it's commonly known All Out War, Walking Dead isn't strictly balanced player versus player sort of for the core game. That's one of the reasons why Mantic have gone and done this Call to Arms, more tournament-focused version of the game. But that doesn't make it a bad game. It's still one of my favourite games. And that's because actually if you played by the book, if you played by the scenarios that's in the book, it's a narrative-driven game. There are asymmetrical sort of scenarios to play. Like there are some very, very powerful models in the game. However, they're not designed to go. They're not designed to go sort of point for point against another army. They're designed to be that kind of all-powerful character that maybe has to take on a bunch of people on their own. and the fact that they have more power kind of outweighs the fact that their numbers are a lot less. So there is some there's some trade-off, there's some balance in there. But you're essentially playing kind of story modes. You're playing co-op against the walkers in the game, against the AI of the game. There are very few actual player versus player scenarios in that game. So if you try and take, and I had a little chat with somebody about this today, if you take a game that is designed to be X, so for example, it's designed to be a narrative campaign, it's designed to be a narrative story, and then you decide, well, I'm going to run a tournament with it, it's either A, not going to work because it's not doing what it was designed to do, or you're going to have to make a lot of changes to make it work, which is what we see in things like the tournament that Paul run over the weekend. He's had to make a lot of changes to the core rules, to some of the abilities and things, to make it a more tournament-focused game. And that's what Mantic have tried to do by bringing out the Call to Arms version. There are many other games of the same. I can't imagine ever having a Necromunda tournament, for example, with the rules as they are. And by the same stretch, things like sort of War Machine, if you like, I would never expect to see a War Machine campaign so much, because it is very much a tournament-focused game. And that's what a lot of this boils down to. Balance is only relevant within the confines of what you're trying to make the game. So if I take this back to Warcry, what we're trying to do with Warcry really is, there's three ways to play in there. There's the narrative way to play it, so you can play very much to the kind of the stories and sort of and go through a whole world of sort of asymmetrical kind of asymmetrical games where one person's maybe a defender, one person's the attacker, you're trying to do something. You've got the campaigns that you can go through, which then is very much about trying to build up your warband, going on a bit of a story, a bit of a mission, if you like, through it. They've designed it so that you don't need to kind of play against the same people. You could take your warband after a couple of campaign days at your store. You could go to another store 100 miles away and join their campaign for the day kind of thing. Because the way it's designed is all you're really doing is challenging warbands and recording the outcome, if you like. Because it's your story, your campaign is how your warband goes through your story. And I think that's a really interesting way to do it. And some people are complaining about, well, on a campaign, what happens if you level up and you get this and that? You're going to outnumber everybody. That is strictly true, but then if you want some enjoyment from the game, challenge somebody else that is also at an equal level. Sort of have a couple of weeks off while other people catch up, play some one-off games, do something different, keep it interesting. The other side is you've then got the matched player section as well, which is designed to be a little bit more balanced and a little bit more competitive. So what it'll do is it'll have extra rules in there, like take all of the cards out of those packs that don't have that symmetrical symbol on it, so that the terrain and the deployment becomes much more balanced. It'll take out some of the twists, and it'll take out some of the win conditions that don't really, they're not really relevant outside of having fun story type games. So for me at the minute, and it is early days, and I must stress that because we haven't played a lot of it yet, and we've played sort of between us as a community. There'll be some people who've played more games than others, but we've ultimately played demo games. We're learning the rules. We are playing with 2 factions. There's a third one to come out on Saturday, along with the 9 non-chaos factions. We're going to have another 2 come a few weeks later. So until we get a few more games under our belt as a community, we're kind of hypothesizing a little bit. But time will tell. Time will tell whether Warcry is that game that bridges that gap between narrative, campaign, and sort of tournament level competitive gameplay. But yeah, just to kind of go back to the original point, really, this idea of balance being achievable, I don't think we really want balance. What we want the illusion, we want the concept of balance. We want to be able to go into a game knowing we haven't lost before we start, to put your models down the table and look across and not think, is it them? They're instantly going to be beat. I hear a lot of it with AOS at the minute, with certain builds within certain kind of factions, and I'm not going to kind of talk about certain ones, but I hear a lot about AOS at the minute. I don't want Warcry to be that, and the way it's set up at the minute, and as long as because those because those factions have pretty much all been designed at the same time, the assumption is they should be relatively sort of matched. I wouldn't say balanced, but they should be relatively matched. What have I called it? Everybody else's. That's about the asymmetry. I thought it was when you said you called it Warcry. What we got? We've got Russell Higgins is saying we want balance. We want balance, but we don't want 100% balance really, because as I said right at the start, and you might have missed it, Russell. What we don't want is we don't just want mirror matchups. We don't want I've got this army in this list, you've got the same army in the same list, and then let's battle it out. Just like chess, for example, or just like drafts, because that's or checkers if you're over in the States, because that's not fun and interesting. That's just playing the game. There's no that it takes some of the hobby aspect out of it, if you like. So we want balance, but we don't want to sacrifice fun, hobby, sort of storytelling, narrative experiences. We don't want to experience that for it. If we did, everybody playing 40k in tournaments would all just play one list, which is essentially what happens when a meta grows around a game, and it basically means that this is the list to take. So you either build this list or you build a list to combat this list. We don't really want games to boil down to that. Glenn Griffin is in as well. He says, "Evening, Blackjackers." Good evening. Skullmunch is saying I look like an Imperial Guard tonight. Yeah. This is one of my airsoft t-shirts actually for underneath my kit. It's just a bit cooler, that's all. VG is saying the key is both players think they have a chance to win. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to kind of aim at. Yeah, he's just saying there we want balance with variance, and that's the hard bit really. Where are we at? This is skipping around tonight. We've got a good chat tonight, and it's skipping around, but I'm trying to catch up. Fomorian's in as well. Good evening, Fomorian. Johnny Jambo says, "Isn't balance just fairness? If they're not balanced, then accept that and play a second game by swapping warbands." There's a lot of what you said there is right. You can't really build fairness into a rule set. That is a lot to do with the social contract between the players. But I think they're almost kind of they're a very, very fine line between them. I know exactly what you mean. Where are we at? Bit of chat there. 12 Neath's in as well. Good evening, 12 Neath. And the Fomorian says, "I skip Warcry to stick to Vanguard, but the discussion about it is very interesting and what players want to get out of Warcry." This is not limited to Warcry at all, buddy, as well. I think that the same thing goes for games like Vanguard as well. It goes for any tabletop game, really. And it goes for 40k, it goes for AOS, it goes for Walking Dead, it goes for Infinity. When it comes to balance, it is everybody wants to feel that they were in with a shout. Whichever models they pick, they're in with a shout. Even if you might intentionally pick a very, very obviously non-kind of optimum list because you want it from a thematic point of view, but it shouldn't be so unbalanced that basically you can't play it, and that does happen quite often in certain games. Where we're at. David saying the Hammer Shield Dagger deployment thing's fantastic. It leads to some hilarious situations. I think it's a real good twist in the game, to be honest. It definitely was. Andy Smith saying he was first. Good evening, Andy Smith. Tony's in as well. Good evening, Mr. Spooky Thing. Peter says Mordheim 1.1. That got referenced actually in the Stormcast thing. Is that almost this is a spiritual successor to Mordheim? But one, I don't know enough about Mordheim to start making comparisons, and so I won't profess to. The other thing is that I don't really want it to be kind of linked to Mordheim. I want Warcry to be its own thing. I don't want to constantly go it's AOS Kill Team or it's Mordheim 2.0. I just want Warcry to be Warcry, really. Chicken Bone's in as well. Good evening, Chicken Bone. Glenn says, "What's the most unbalanced game of anything you've ever played?" Oh, personally, for me, it was probably Age of Sigmar. When it kind of changed, I think it was the General's Handbook 2017 maybe. There was a big swing, and certain factions just weren't really up to the job. They changed the way objectives could be won. Low model count armies basically were kind of out of the window. So for me at that particular time, AOS was probably the most unbalanced. And Games Workshop, they get a bit of a bad rap for balancing their games. And I think some of it is to do with the amount of games that the community plays versus the amount of play testing that the company can do. I mean, as an example, as I said, like in that Stormcast podcast, he said there's something like 14 million combinations of those 4x36 cards. There is no way they have played 14 million games as a playtest. So at some point, you will come up with a really kind of clunky, weird scenario win kind of thing, or a weird win condition, depending upon where the deployment is. So there might be some of those kind of things. And I think because Games Workshop games are popular, they seem to get more physical games played all over the world on a weekly basis. So we tend to hear about those things that get missed, those little kind of loopholes that get found in the rules. Some people like sort of, it is their hobby to find those broken combinations that nobody else has found yet. So Games Workshop potentially suffer more than most. Now, whether that's because they play test less or because there's a bigger community that finds all the problems faster, who knows? Chicken Bone says MTG. Interesting. I've not played much Magic. I've obviously played a couple of like sort of basic games with my kids years ago and stuff, but I've not played enough to know whether it's sort of massively unbalanced. See, we got a bit more challenge. Where we at? Richard's saying, I'll also say that there's the buy-in. If anyone owns the entire Walking Dead collection, for instance, they have so much more scope to build an overpowered team compared to someone that's just got the core box. Thanks, Richard. That's another really good example as well. Is that where pay to win comes in? Is that where basically games companies want us to keep buying miniatures, don't they? Of course they do. Games Workshop survive on selling lots of miniatures. Every miniatures company survives on selling miniatures. So they want to tempt you into these kind of new miniatures. And that's where you can intentionally imbalance a game by making the point cost or making the power of a model just that little bit too tempting so that everybody buys it. It becomes the auto include. It becomes the new hotness. It becomes the new meta, if you like. But then there's also that balance between I've just bought a starter set, or I've just bought a core set, or a start collecting army or something, and I've got a very limited pool of options. You have a huge pool of options, therefore you can pick a much more optimal list. So no matter how balanced you make armies from the get-go, the bigger the game becomes, the more imbalanced it's going to be. Now, when you're sort of doing this within a skirmish game like Warcry, you can control that to a little bit more of an extent. We're already saying that you can only have between 3 and 15 models. Therefore, it's never going to get arms and legs, and it's never going to become kind of sort of I'm going to take these 20 big guys and I'm going to do this. So we've already got some restrictions around it, which limit what models you can take. If you compare it to bigger army scale games, things like 40k and AOS and Kings of War and things like that, when you're playing at 2,000 points, 2,500 points, there's a lot more scope for building in those broken combinations. At a smaller scale, a lot of that is taken off your hands, if you like. Skullmunch is saying he hates balance, that's why he's not a gymnast. Yeah, I'm not built to be a gymnast either. Christian is saying hit that like button. Thank you very much. Please do, people. Peter's saying I hate balance, it's why I drink. Alan is saying Kill Team Arena is supposed to be the most balanced version of Kill Team, but having played a few games, I suspect Hordes rule. I don't think I've played Arena with Hordes, if I'm honest, so I can't really comment on that. In theory, they shouldn't rule because you kind of get funneled down corridors a little bit more in Arena. But certainly in normal Kill Team, line of sight was really important. So if you had sort of slow-moving orcs, you had to play it on a board that was very densely compacted with terrain to get them orcs behind stuff. Otherwise, you'd have armies like Tau or like Space Marines even just sitting picking them off with rifles. So couldn't really comment on Arena, I don't think, when it comes to hordes. But I think it was that there's nothing to say the points costs were balanced army to army. It was just that the setup of the terrain was balanced. So basically, they took one of the reasons a game could become unbalanced was for exactly that kind of kill team reason I said before. If you've got a slow moving, close combat army, you need lots of terrain, and if that board didn't have terrain on it, you were kind of screwed from the get go. What they tried to do was you knew roughly what kind of terrain you'd be playing on before you ever started the game with Arena, because it was going to be one of maybe 5 or 6 sort of terrain layouts, if you like. Phil Johnson's in as well. Good evening, Phil. He says, problem is unbalanced games become boring. Balanced mirror matches as everyone gravitates to the net list. It's quite interesting you say that. So you say unbalanced games become boring because everybody gravitates to the balanced lists. And that's kind of it's almost a kind of a bit of a conundrum in itself, isn't it? So it becomes boring because everybody plays the balanced lists. So you're almost doing those mirror matchups. And that was really where I started this conversation. That we don't want perfect balance. We want the illusion of balance. We want the concept of equal opportunity when it comes to actually being on the battlefield. So I think you're almost demonstrating my point perfectly there. Glenn saying you don't really hear too much about Kill Team Arena these days. I think you probably, if you are a player that plays Kill Team and you play in tournaments, you probably do hear a lot about it. It's like the internet's a funny place, especially when it comes to tabletop gaming, because you can believe a game isn't very popular because your local guys don't play it, or it doesn't get played in your shop, or you don't see anything about it on the internet. So Infinity is a prime example. There are hardly any Infinity back reps on the internet. Very, very few, if any. So you would be led to think that Infinity isn't a very popular game. But Corvus Belli pretty much make their entire business off the back of selling that one game. They've got Aristea, but that's not huge in comparison. They pretty much make their money and support a full team of people from that one game. War Machine is a similar one. Malifaux is another one. These games that have maybe took a little bit of a backseat over the few years, but are coming back with new additions, trying to put some kind of balance and structure back into a game, because these games got way too many models and way too many factions and became completely unwieldy. They are popular games and they support those companies, but we just don't seem to hear about them online. If you're not a member of a Malifaux group, or you don't look for Malifaux stuff on YouTube, you won't get it pushed out of you in your subscription feed. Things like Games Workshop stuff will fill it because it's a critical mass of that kind of stuff. Oh, sorry, the chat's just jumped up again there. Let me find out where I was. Harjinder has just come in as well. Good evening, buddy. How are you? Marcus is in as well. Good evening, Marcus. He says, hi all. Late to the pub. Sorry, is it my round? Yes, please, mate. On Mug Watch tonight, I'm back on the cold juice just to try and keep this heat down a little bit. Hendrik saying Monopoly. I assume we're talking about the most unbalanced games. Mark's just popped in as well. Mark's away on holiday at the moment. He says morning. Just popped in to say hi. Can't fully miss it. I appreciate that, mate. Thank you very much. TJ Nuts is in as well. Good evening, TJ. Says Warcry is its own thing, I believe. It's a different game from any other GW games, in my opinion. It's a skirmish game that just happens to use the world lore from AOS. Couldn't agree more, mate. That's exactly my feelings too. Where else we are as well? Bit of chat going on. We got Mark SG in. Good morning, Mark. He says these games are war games. I know that many are fantastical, but if you look at history, have very few even battles. This is where the great stories are created. Yeah, I agree, mate. I mean, nobody counts up their soldiers before they go to battle, do they? And I guess with AOS, when it first came out, that's probably what Games Workshop were trying to do. Almost by taking away the points cost, they wanted to just kind of create that, just take what you want and have fun. And whilst I can understand why they did that, there are too many people are just accustomed to wanting to try and to have some form of balance from the off. So if I've got 100 points, you've got 100 points, or whatever it is, 1,000 points, then at least we've got a common starting point. If you leave it up to people to just come up with their own balancing mechanic, some people will take advantage of that. You will also get the people that can afford to buy more. Kirill is saying there are many levels of balancing games between unit characteristics, units in faction, aspects of the game like fighting and shooting, and between factions. In advanced games, it's impossible to achieve an ideal, but it's an important aspect, especially between units and factions. It's really interesting because the more complex a rule set becomes, the more opportunities there are to imbalance things. And one of the things I do love about Warcry is the fact that they've kept the main core rules very, very straightforward. And that means that I think if they'd gone into a lot more kind of crunch and a lot more granularity with the rules of Warcry, you probably would have got bogged down in the game a little bit, because then you introduce all of the setup with the different kind of scenarios, and then you introduce the abilities with rolling the hero dice and all of that stuff. If you then mix in a much more granular rule set, I think it might have just got a bit bogged down. So I really do I admire what they've done in backing those rules away and letting the gameplay come out. Bit of chat there between people. Skullmunch is saying balance was a real problem in the World of Warcraft. Eventually all the classes ended up playing very similar. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the point. It goes back to what I was saying really about that actually we don't really want them all to be the same. That is the perfect level of balance. If every sort of faction, every warband, every army all had the same stat line, and we just gave them different models for the appearance of looking different, we'd soon kind of get bored. Sort of factions need to have that something special about them. Why am I drawn to Iron Golems? Why am I drawn to the Unmade? What's special about them? It's not just the look of the models. They've maybe got some kind of special rule that makes them a little bit quirky, makes them do something a little bit different. But when rules are introduced into games that break the core rules or introduce a negative play experience, that's when there's a bit of a backlash on things. So the last thing we want to do is boil a game down to just everybody has the same stat line. Even if the models are different, we don't, and this goes back to my point again, we don't really want it to be perfectly balanced. We want that illusion of balance. We want the idea of basically being able to have a chance. Douglas is saying he's probably selling his arena. It's still on the sprue. Yeah, mine's not had a lot of play time, I'll be honest. Busey's saying Robinsons or Juicy. Don't remember, to be honest. It's probably some supermarket own brand thing, to be fair. So there you go. Buzz is in as well, says now then. Good evening, Butter. Alan says, I like the lack of crunch in Warcry. Should make it fast and brutal. It's part of what I love about it, mate. I said it on last week's live stream as well, that essentially I don't want a game to be overly complex to the point where I feel like I need a degree in the rules, and that if I don't play it for a few weeks or a month, that I can't get my head back into the game. I mean, when I played it with Jamie at Asgard War Games, when we played our demo games, I'd read the rules kind of when they were leaked, which was nice. But we learned the game as we played it, really. Jamie had not read the rules, he didn't know anything about it, and we managed to learn the rules and play the game in 45 minutes and have a really fun time. And essentially, that's what I want from a game. I do enjoy going to tournaments, but for me, sometimes even the tournaments are almost secondary. I enjoy the meeting new people. I enjoy having a night away or a weekend away or a day out gaming. I enjoy playing against new people. I enjoy just having a fun experience. But I like to feel like I want to feel like I'm in with a chance of winning. If I get beat, it's because I wasn't good enough, not just because the game was so unbalanced I didn't stand a chance before I rolled the dice, if you like. Paul saying a slight imbalance leaves more room for different strategies, I think. Heavy hitters versus light and quick movers. I think an element of imbalance allows people to, you're right, to come up with strategies. It allows them to adapt lists to try and find ways of coping with other things. Because if games were perfectly balanced, you'd kind of find there'll be one way to win, really, because as soon as you deviate from that one way to win, it's imbalanced again. It's not balanced. So, Gene saying asymmetrical versus symmetrical is a great beast of wargaming. People who want to win foremost expect balance, but pursuit of the enjoyable game is dependent on keeping things interesting. 100%, mate. Benji B's in, says, evening, Andy. Good evening, Benji B. SBG. How are you doing, mate? You all right? We also got Mr. Oh, I'm going to try and butcher this one as well. Mr. Kratos. Is that Kratos? I hope that is. He says, buy or not buy, looks too simple for me. Mr. Kratos, my video that is coming later this week is about, is Warcry too simple? That's the one you want to check out. It goes into a lot of the background. I've maybe skirted around a few issues tonight. Is Warcry too basic or too simple? I've got a video coming up about that this week, so watch out for that one. Christopher's saying, I think the only other warband outside of the start I'll buy is the Unmade. To be honest, when I looked at them when I first saw them announced, there was none that really grabbed me. The Corvus Cabal were the ones that I thought maybe I could get on board with them. But I'm going to end up buying them all. I know I am. I think they're all fantastic sculpts. I don't think there's any that I instantly kind of dislike. And I like the fact that they've all got different kind of play styles. They're small model count. Won't take me long to build and paint them. So I think I'm going to end up building them all. And then maybe I'll change my kind of play style to play the faction that I like playing the most, I think. I'm buying all of the cards for the non-chaos stuff, but more for information and for channel stuff, really. Not because I think I'm going to suddenly buy 9 kind of like factions of non-chaos stuff. Where we are, let's just jump around a bit there. Andy Smith saying, you can't balance teams, no point. Try different tactics and go from there. Yeah, that really is that's the crux of what I'm trying to say here. Really, is that we want the feel. I know I keep saying the same thing, but people will be coming in and out of the chat, and not everybody will watch the whole thing. We want the illusion of balance. We want the feeling that we had a chance. Peter say, just to say, Robert Zunkson as well. Good evening, Robert. How are you doing, man? Richard says, doesn't imbalance also help a game? People then talk about it for good and bad reasons. It causes noise around the game, so then a company can push the updated books. You touch on a good point there, mate, because when I'd said before about intentionally imbalancing a game, there are reasons why companies do that. I have heard stories about companies who have released miniatures with intentionally too strong rules to sell miniatures, and then once they've been out for a month, they kind of FAQ them or they errata them and they pull them back. By that point, everybody's bought them because they were the latest hotness kind of thing. There's sometimes that happens accidentally. It's a tactic for companies that can be used to make you buy more stuff. Is it unethical or is it just good business practice? I'll let you decide that one. Excuse me. We've got Phil Hall is in as well. Good evening, Phil Hall, new to the channel. Says, been away from wargaming for a while and think Warcry is the perfect game to me. Would you advise just playing with the core set or getting a second warband? If you're just, first of all, thanks for joining the chat and thanks for finding the channel. Secondly, if you're just new to it, just buy the core set. Everything that you will need to play. Even if you decided you never wanted to buy anything else again, you've got a self-contained 2-player game in that core set. If you want to then jump on from there and buy some other war bands and do some different pieces, feel free. If you're enjoying it and you want to try mixing it up a little bit. But if you just want to dip your toe in and you want to get started, that core box really is all you'll need for 2 players to play Warcry. Paul saying chess is so balanced that it comes down purely to the skill of the individual, which is why a lot of people hate it. Yeah, and I guess that is the people that love it because they are the best at it. They can master the game. They become a grandmaster because they have learned ways to battle their opponent without the game being one of the variables, if you like. The rules of the game are constant for both people. The deployment, the pieces, the movement, everything is a constant. the only variable in chess is the brain power of the two players. It doesn't feel like a fun game though, and I've played bits of chess over the years, and I know how to play. I'm no grandmaster, but it never feels like a fun game, and I never feel like after a game of chess I go, that was fantastic, let's play again. That's maybe not my kind of thing. I've played many tabletop miniature games where the whole thing's been like a kind of cinematic film in my head, and I've really enjoyed it, and I've talked about events that's happened, and can you remember when this happened, and can you remember when I rolled all them sixes, and those kind of things. That element of fun and that element of imbalance and the element of surprise and fluctuations because of the look of the dice, that's what makes us remember, and that's what makes us love these games. Hodginder says, you wouldn't think Lord of the Rings is still played if you just played at a GW store. It's kept alive by clubs and gaming groups. To be honest, buddy, somebody like Benji B that was in the chat earlier on as well, people like that have kept this game alive. If it wasn't for those folks, those players who played Lord of the Rings when it wasn't really supported by GW anymore, the game wouldn't be where it is now. It's one of those things that you maybe don't see a lot of stuff on YouTube for it. Again, it's not the most popular game. There are certain channels that do really good jobs of it, and they get great viewing figures and great subscriber numbers because they do a great job of covering a big game that actually isn't that popular online. If you look at AOS as an example, there's not a lot of Age of Sigmar channels on YouTube. You wouldn't potentially think it's as big as it is as well. So if you do most of your gaming around YouTube, you'll kind of be you'll be a little bit blinkered to some of the big games that are out there. We've got Brian Schmidt in as well. Says hello from Irvine, California. I'm stoked for Warcry. Simplified, streamlined rule sets are a plus for me. That makes two of us, mate. Andy is saying, can it be too simple if it's fun? I think it can be too simple if it doesn't retain you as a player. If you've played it, say, 5 or 10 times and you think, I've pretty much seen everything there is to this, I enjoyed it, it was fun while I played it, but I've got no desire to go back and play it again, then I think it can be too simple. I don't think this one is, to be honest. Mr. Kratos is saying he's going to check out the video. Yep, it'll definitely be up this week, buddy. Where else we at? There's a bit of chat backwards and forwards. We've got Patrick Pender in. Good evening, Patrick. He says, do I get this or hold out for a Mordheim-esque type of game? First of all, Patrick, thank you for joining us. If you're holding out for Mordheim, honestly, I don't think it's coming. The old world is no more from a GW perspective, certainly from a miniatures gaming, and I can't see Mordheim really coming back anytime soon. So if you're holding out for Mordheim itself, you might as well go and pick up the old rules and try and play that. If you're looking for that kind of narrative experience, there are games like Frostgrave that are out there that I think Warcry kind of borrows from in certain aspects. I think it does a better job of, but I think it borrows a lot from Frostgrave. I think Warcry also borrows from things like the what they call the war cards from 40k with the battle plan things. I forget what they are. It borrows a little bit from the setup and the missions of things like Star Wars Legion. It depends what kind of game if you want really. If you want a really heavy sort of narrative rule set, maybe this is not the game for you. Something like sort of Necromunda has a much more in-depth campaign system. If you just want a fun game that doesn't take very long to play, maybe dip in and give it a try. You know, it's not difficult rules, but there's enough strategy and enough variance in the game to keep you coming back for more. I just noticed there. So Andy's saying, I don't want balance. I like to beat the odds and laugh about it. Took me 30 years to win a game of Space Hulk. Everything that's worth fighting for is kind of like it's worth fighting for, if you like, isn't it? Tony's saying Guild Ball's pretty balanced in general, but it's the asymmetry of the guilds that makes the game interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting one, really, from a balance point of view. Because again, there's not a lot of choice. If you decide to go into butchers, for example, I can't remember these days, but is there like 10 models to choose from? And there's no points cost, is there? You just choose your numbers if you like. It's quite interesting what they've done. So rather than trying to unbalance the game by growing out the factions to more and more models, they've added factions to it that they can balance within a bubble, if you like. And that's quite a clever way to do it. And I can see Warcry going in a similar direction. That we don't just keep seeing more and more models for 9 warbands. We'll see more and more warbands coming, if you like. Marcus is saying, I think the crit system in Underworlds is a really clever mechanic for balance. Your last fighter can be completely cornered and outnumbered, but still has that chance of a crit save. I'm a bit funny about saves at time. When you've done all that hard work to kind of like to get your hits through and to wound and all that kind of stuff, sometimes just to be really annoyed by that lucky 6 can feel a bit flat at times. But I know what you mean. Horrid person, Gene Ness in good position, Andy wouldn't want to die on a hill deciding on the ethics of imbalance. Holden as well, good evening, mate. He says, late at the party, no matter how balanced you think a war game and its factions are, there will always be someone who manages a mini max combo. Yeah, and that's kind of exactly where we were starting from, mate, to be fair. Unless you basically fix the list and make everybody play with the same lists, there'll always be somebody who finds a loophole or finds a way around it. As soon as you give people options, you lose perfect balance. You'll never have balance at that point. As soon as you give people multiple options to choose, so if you say there's 100 models to choose from, put 50 on the table, you've lost balance. You can't balance to that extremes. Top Table Gaming saying balance in Warcry is extremely hard to judge. There are so many factors involved, you simply can't cater for every outcome of the card draws alone, never mind your opponent's list. And that's why I think they've been really clever, mate. I assume it's still Steve. I think that's why they've been really clever, because it's not about the list so much. It's not about the warbands. I like the fact that they kind of have limited some of the lists by the way they've pointed the models, and the sort of like the 1,000 points is what you can take. The list building element is probably narrowed down quite some way. Just while I mentioned about both Top Table Gaming as well, they've obviously done some great battle reports that Steve's been editing. Please do go and check them out. Battle reports for Warcry, I should say. And also, they also do a live stream once every 2 weeks. They'll be live streaming this Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And I'll be on their live stream this week. I'm down in Manchester with work, so I'm popping into Element Games to do the live stream with the guys from Top Table this week as well. So if you want to see more of my face, I'll be on Wednesday as well. Where are we at? Matt saying chess models are not very fun to paint either. Terrible for contrast paint, mate. Awful. Maybe the night. I'm where we are. Oh, that's kind of jumping off the screen, but I'm trying to catch up with where everything is up to. Skullmunch is just saying, I know a great YouTube channel for Middle Earth. Yes, mate, I've just mentioned Top Table. And Cardos Darkforge, good evening, buddy. Says, hello, sorry, been working Mondays as of late. Well, thank you for joining the chat tonight. Much appreciated. I think as well, I can see on my screen, at one point, we had 100 people in the chat tonight. So last week when we talked about Warcry, we got to 99, and part of me was like, oh, would have been nice to get 100. We've had 100 tonight. We've got 94 at the minute. But I just thought I'd say that because it's amazing, really. I mean, I can't tell. I assume it's the topics. It's the Warcry that's bringing people in. Warcry is the kind of the late hotness thing at the minute. But it's really nice that we can have 100 people in the chat, all kind of keeping the chat going, people chatting to each other, and it gives me a chance to ramble as well. So thanks to everybody that's been in there, certainly this week and last week as well. It just kind of keeps the chat flowing. Jason is saying, balance, in my opinions, both sides. Everyone feels like they have a chance to win. Sure, different matchups and scenarios may be more difficult, but you're never out of it. And that's the key bit. You're never out of it. Or you're certainly never out of it from the off. You might find halfway through the game you've played really badly and that's it, you're out of the game now. You can't do much to bring it back. But you should never feel like you are starting the game with an auto lose. And there are games out there that certainly have that in them. I'm going to try and pronounce this name, so I apologise if I do butcher it. Is it Oh, it's going to be kind of Spanish sound, is it? João Caldinas. I apologise. I'm sure you know who you are, and you know I'm butchering your name. But welcome to the chat tonight. So I feel like it's very easy to have a decent game balance. Some people just have a negative impression, mostly because of GW games. But for example, Mantic always does a good job at rule sets. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. And some of that comes from the fact that their rule sets are relatively simple as well. They're not overly complicated. I don't play their games sort of competitively enough to know how balanced things are. So Kings of War, for example, I don't know how balanced that game is from a real competitive rule set. But certainly the games of Vanguard I've played and the games of things like Walking Dead, they're balanced to what the game is intended to be. Where are we at? Horrid person saying Frostgrave doesn't do it for me because the bulk of a warband feels like chessmen spoiled by old Mordheim. I've not played Frostgrave or Mordheim, so I'll take your word for that, mate. Kirill saying, what about Warcry? I don't mind its simplicity and the game mechanics seem interesting, but I don't like its style and miniatures, although I admit that everything is done stylistically. That's the thing, mate. I mean, it doesn't matter what the game is or who makes it. If the theme doesn't grab you, if the style of the game doesn't grab you, there's no point playing it. There are loads of games out there that I'm sure have fantastic rule sets. A prime example would be Flames of War. I'm sure it's a great game, but small scale World War II miniatures won't really do it for me. I couldn't get invested in painting really, really small miniatures. So therefore the game doesn't really do it for me. Played Painted is in as well. Good evening, Played Painted. We're just trying off the top of my screen now as well. I've got to try and find your comment. Where was it? There it is. How often do you game and how many miniature game systems do you regularly review? I game pretty much every week. I will have some game. Now, whether that might be a board game with family, it might be a miniatures game with friends, I might be at an event or something like that. But I would say at least 3 or 4 times a month I play games, and I tend to play lots of different things. Some of it is for variety for the channel. Some of it is just because I'm a bit of a magpie and I like to kind of play lots of different things. And from a review perspective, I've kind of backed off on the reviewing stuff because I was doing a lot of board gaming stuff a little while ago, and it got to the point where I would never review a game until I'd at least played it 3 times to try and kind of get a feel for it. And it got to a point where I think it stopped being fun. I was playing the game to almost interrogate it, and I was looking for loopholes, and I was looking for the bits I didn't enjoy and the things that didn't work so well. And that got a little bit to the point where actually I was thinking that it's not as fun anymore now. So I kind of backed off doing a lot of the reviews. So I review stuff a lot less now. I kind of just give opinions now, I would say. I don't buy things to review. I tend to play things for fun and then give an opinion. So that's kind of how I do it now. Hope that is clear. Might not have been. Where are we at now? It's jumped around again. Craig saying, I find with Rumble Slam, there's no team that's overpowered or unbeatable. Each team has their own set of strengths and weaknesses, which over the game kind of balances it out. It's another thing, I think it's another really good point about skirmish games, really, of which I would class Rumble Slam as a skirmish game. The fewer models you've got, the less ability there is to kind of massively imbalance it. If you take Apocalypse, for example, 40k Apocalypse, I would imagine there's very little balance in those kind of games. You are playing for the fun of putting all your toys on the table. Henrik says, how is your balance? Are you still doing the running? I've not been running much, mate, to be honest. I did get out of it again, but I have got my bike out. So I've started doing a bit of biking to try and build up a bit of core strength and get some fitness back before I get back on the running again. Skullman says, we did get 100, got a screenshot and posted it in the Facebook group. Thank you, buddy. I've got a little thing on the screen, like the YouTube analytics stuff in the background, that tells me what the kind of like max concurrent thing is. And out the corner of my eye, I can just see it's got 3 digits, so that was good. We've got Barry Cleaver, says, wasn't in last week. Like to think I tipped the 100 for you, cheers. Thank you very much, you're a hero. And Alan Cleary says, 100 plus views and only 36 likes. Get liking that video, folks. And if anybody isn't subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. It doesn't really make much difference other than the fact that it kind of gives you that momentum of sort of, you get a bit more channel power, if you like. So when your video goes up, it gets shared out amongst a bigger group of people. If more people watch it initially, it gets shared out to a bigger group of people. And the bigger you get, it kind of helps with getting your videos out in front of people. So if you've got 100,000 subscribers, for example, your video gets shared with much more of that subscriber base than if you've got 100 subscribers. Like, not all of your subscribers get told you've got a new video. So yeah, it's all to do with all the algorithm stuff in the background. Anyway, to cut a long story short, if you're not subscribed, please do. It means the world. Jack says, many games are balanced in a rock, paper, scissors style. This is how it is with Magic the Gathering. Still fun, but not as good. That's almost the worst kind of balance. Because then you just get that horrible feeling when you put your toys on the table and go, oh, it's a bad matchup. Never going to win this one. I just got a bad matchup. And for me, that's the worst kind of balance you can have. I'd rather it was completely just kind of chaos and random than just having that, oh, I'm going to win this one because they've got a bad matchup this time. So yeah, that's a funny one, that one. Moxie and Vanguard for story, Warcry for pulp action. I'll be honest, I don't get a lot of story from Vanguard. And to be fair, I've never really been a kind of a narrative gamer. Apart from there is something about Warcry that's grabbed me from a background perspective. And I'm going to be buying the Warcry anthology book as well for the background stories. I don't get that from Vanguard, and that's not a slight on Mantic and their rules writing or their kind of lore writing. It just doesn't trigger that in me. It doesn't trigger the storylines in me personally. Cardos is saying Arena Rex and Test of Honor are my two favourite skirmish games. A lot of fun. Have you played the new Test of Honors? There's new rules coming out for it, isn't there? Jamie says there, for avoidance of doubt, he's not a magpie. I am not a magpie. I'm a magpie gamer. I like to jump around and see the shiny things. I am not a magpie, as in the Geordie version. Dean says, can't be sacrificing fun for reviews. Better off without. 100%, buddy. That's exactly why I've kind of backed off on some of that stuff. Robbie Last says, good morning from Australia, everyone. Good morning, Robbie Last. And hello to Sandro, who's just there, subscribed there as well. Thank you very much. Andy Smith says, you hit the nail on the head. Toys to play with. Have fun. Not stress over. Exactly, mate. Exactly. We've got Steve Bonner in as well. It says, hey, everybody. Hello, Steve. I assume you're painting about 9,000 models tonight. We've got Tom Dean as well. It says, BlackJack, hi. Good evening, Tom. How are you doing? Adam says, good morning from the future. We must have hit that. When we get to 10 o'clock, we seem to get all the Aussies in. Good morning, mate. How you doing, future boy? And a bit more chat there. Is that what the time is already? We're flying by tonight. Let me have a little drink and try and catch up again. So then, folks, we're obviously chatting about Warcry on the main here, but there are other games as well. Is there any games that you've experienced where you've just felt defeated before you've kind of even rolled a dice? Is there a game where you've spent months and months building up that army and painting it and getting it ready, and then when you've got it on the table, you just think, oh, well, that was a waste of time? Have you ever experienced that? Or conversely, I mean, Tony mentioned there about Guild Ball. Do we think that one of the kind of the attractions to skirmish games at the minute is the fact that actually skirmish games allow you to try and control that element of balance much better than mass battle games? Is that a thing? Where are we at? A bit of chat about the future and the past. Cardos says, I'm going to play a Test of Honor 2 at Gen Con this week, mate. First of all, very jealous you're going to Gen Con. I would love to go to Gen Con one day. I've even had a chat with my wife at one point as well about, can we try and make it a family holiday? Is there anywhere around Indianapolis we could maybe try and kind of have a couple of weeks over in the States and I could escape for a few days and go to Gen Con? So one day, mate. So yeah, first of all, very jealous. Hope you have an amazing time. And that goes for anybody else that's going to Gen Con this week coming, yeah. this weekend coming, I should say. And yeah, let me know. Come back in the chat next week. Let me know what Gen Con was like. Let me know what you thought of Test of Honor 2. Robbie says, I reckon Blood Bowl has a fun balance where there's an understood tier list and coaches who want novelty or a challenge go for stunty teams or lesser teams. That's quite interesting because I always feel like Blood Bowl is very unbalanced. However, it's unbalanced with the fun and chaos, if you like. So because it's so random, it almost unbalances the game before you even pick the team. But if everybody understands that from the get-go, it's kind of half the battle, isn't it? We've got Ellis Priestley as well. Good evening, Ellis. I hope you're well. Says Age of Sigmar is the worst for it. That was kind of my experience as well. It wasn't always like that, but over time it felt like it kind of grown into something else. It was one of the reasons I didn't want Warcry to be kind of Age of Sigmar light. I wanted it to be its own thing. I like the fact that it's alternating activations and it's not move, sort of shoot, attack, like close combat stuff. Yeah. Is that? I don't know how recently you play Age of Sigmar. Do you still play it now? Is anybody else plays it? Is that generally how people feel about it these days? I'm certainly not as close to it as I used to be. Thank you to Tim Robinson, who's just subscribed as well. If you're in the chat tonight, thank you very much. Steve says, no painting tonight. First shift back from 2 weeks off. 120 still on the table from the weekend. Chess versus my uncle. Peter says, I almost never win tabletop games, so for balance, I keep my opponent outside for the first few turns. Do you come at it with a defeatist attitude? Is that what it is? You need to be more positive, mate. Positive mental attitude. VJ says, I feel defeated in advance going into pretty much every time with Underworlds, as I'm so bad at deck building and card combos. Yeah, that was one of the things that kind of turned me off Underworlds. I really like the game itself, and if I'm just playing for fun with mates or with family or whatever, I still think it's a really good game. But it's a card game. There's no two ways about it. Underworlds is a card game with miniatures. And if you're not into that deck building aspect like Magic the Gathering and that kind of stuff, you're going to come unstuck, unfortunately. And that's a real shame because there's a good game in there. Kirill says, Guild Ball, I was totally destroyed a pair of times. Guild Ball has a really high sort of steep learning curve. That's what I was looking for. Once you understand the game, it becomes much more balanced. But somebody who knows what they're doing versus somebody just getting started will absolutely wipe them from the table every time. Super Fantasy Brawl, game that I backed at Kickstarter and I had on the live stream a little while ago with Az, is another game that feels balanced. And it feels balanced in the fact that it's not sort of faction specific. You can pick the models you want. Therefore, it'll drive its own kind of, not power creep, but it'll drive its own direction of there will be some models that will always seem to be the more powerful one, and they'll get banned in competitive play because people will just ban them when they sit down across the table. And there'll be some that maybe might be a little bit lower tier. But all of those options are available to everyone. Maybe that is the perfect example of we all start with the same choice, if you like. And then from that point onwards, balance goes out of the window because it's all to do with choices at that point. That's quite an interesting concept, really, to think about it like that. We all have, or is every game like that? Because we all have choices of all of the different factions. It's just that it takes a long time to get them on the table. Interesting, just kind of come to mind there. Matt says, played War Machine once, got thrashed. My opponent told me he knew he'd won when I told him what force I was using. Yes, unfortunately, there can be experiences like that. Douglas is saying, I expected Kill Team to be different, simpler. It became bloated. I looked at it recently and just thought, why didn't I wait to spend my money on Warcry? I think it depends on who you play and where you play and how you play it. Kill Team from the box, from the original core box, is still a phenomenally good game. There was just lots of optional stuff, and I know I kind of kick it from time to time, but there were options. You didn't have to play them. The difference was if you went to a local gaming store, it was hard to to find that happy medium, if you like. And I think that's what Arena tried to do but maybe it was too little too late at that point. Christian is saying, Labyrinth board game is unbalanced. I can't beat it. Always feels like you're going into it to see at what point you will lose. Even that in itself, it's almost like a kind of like a Space Invaders game, isn't it? Like you're gonna get beat at some point, but it's just about how far you get. What's your high score? There's an element of actually sort of enjoyment in just trying to beat your last score, if you like. Tim was saying some of the X-Wing competitions I've played, some lists and players are just deadly, meta unbalanced, really boring opponents. That is the entire reason why X-Wing 2.0 came out. It got to a point where it was just out. It got out of control, and they had to try and bring it back in again. Ellis is saying, I played an event at the weekend, 3 games, won all 3, and won the event. My second game was over in 40 minutes because of the matchup. And the same for my first. I played Warcry in between and had more fun. So you play quite a bit then, mate. It's a shame that that's where the game's got to. I really hope the next General Handbook tries to address that a little bit, because it's a good looking game. I love the miniatures, I love the models, and the core rules in themselves are really good. It's just a real shame there's so many kind of allegiances and allegiance abilities and all of this kind of stuff now, and that the what they called the spells, endless spells, and all that kind of just got out of hand. Ellis is also saying Guild Ball isn't about the guilds, it's about the skill experience, like you say. Yep. Jack saying, I used to play a Pokemon card game and video games competitively. The weakness and resistance system created a lot of bad time, but also some games that were like cat and mouse, which were great. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I played a bit of League of Legends over the weekend. So one of my sons is a really good League of Legends player. I mean, he's quite high up the rankings and stuff. Plays at the minute now. He's finished school for the summer, and he's starting college in September. He's pretty much playing about 8 or 10 hours a day at the minute. So he coached me through a few games at the weekend, and he was talking me through you need to ban this character because of who you're playing, and I was playing in the bottom lane, and he was saying that's a bad matchup for you, and then he was saying, like, you're going to get overpowered in the early game, but you've got a stronger late game, so you need to back off and you need to kind of farm the minions. And it was one of those games where if I'd just gone in and played it, I'd have got my ass handed to me multiple times. However, because somebody who knew what they were doing was coaching me through it, the game began to feel balanced. So yeah, there's no kind of substitute for skill and experience, definitely. Marco's popped in as well there. He says, sorry, but I'm just passing by, still at work. I'll catch you in the morning. I'll catch you in the recording, sorry. Well, hello to future Marco as well when you watch this back. VJ saying he's looking forward to Super Fantasy Brawl. Definitely sold me on that after leaving Underworld. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think Marco actually randomly said that the late pledges, the pledge managers just opened now as well, but I haven't had an email about it yet. So I'm expecting to see that in the next few days. So anybody that didn't back Super Fantasy Brawl and wishes they did, I think there's late pledges will be available for it as well. Alice is saying AOS is if you don't play Fascinator Court, Fire Slayers and Skaven. Daughters of Cain or Slanesh, you might as well not bother. Yeah, I was a Beastclaw Raiders army. Pretty much never, not much point. Robert saying I play a kill team from the original core box, we still have fun with it. Yeah, that's my experience too, mate, really. I like the look of the original core box from all of the nice big terrain. I didn't like that from the arena when it started to come out. VJ saying I wish I'd bailed on Underworlds after season 1, but my needs to finish the set made me stick with it. Yes, I basically didn't buy into Nighthaunt either. Night Vault. I stayed with season 1. And that was as far as I got. I bought everything for season 1, and then realised that it was just about buying cards basically at that point. Then there's obviously a bit of chat going on backwards and forwards there. Cardos says after 100+ games of Song of Ice and Fire, I feel it's very balanced. That's interesting, mate. I don't really know anybody that plays a lot of Song of Ice and Fire. It's a game I really like the look of. I've never tried it. I've never played it. I've seen the miniatures. The miniatures look fantastic. I like that little bit of bigger scale, and I like the fact that they're single piece. But I've never played it. Maybe it's something I should pick up at least give a try to at some point, I should say. Peter says I got Here's Negan just for the models, but it happens to be a fun game. Yeah, Here's Negan is what it is. It's a great board game with some very nice miniatures in it. And again, it's because you're playing against the game and there's random dice rolls in there. It's never always going to feel balanced. You're going to be up against it sometimes. Things will happen that because the game is designed to be random. There's an element of balance in there by the fact is depending upon how many heroes you're starting with or survivors you're starting with. It depends on which rooms get opened and things like that. So there's definitely there's support in there to try and make it more achievable. But yeah, it's another game that's it's not perfectly balanced, if you like. That's for sure. Right, I'm just going to grab a quick drink because I'm drying up there a little bit now. If you haven't given the video a thumbs up, I really would appreciate it if you did. We've got 49 thumbs up, I think it is there now, which is not too bad for a Monday Night Live. The last couple of weeks have been lively ones. I'm certainly going to be covering a lot more Warcry stuff coming up. I get my set this week, so then that'll give me a chance to actually have some stuff to talk about rather than just sort of theory hammering it. If there's anything specific that you want to see on the channel about Warcry, please do let me know either in the comments here or down below in the chat. Not in the chat, sorry, in the comments of the video or in the chat tonight. Or if you're watching this back later, feel free to drop in the comments. And if there's anything else that you kind of want to see, which bits of the channel do you like to see? I'm in a bit of a weird kind of situation at the minute where I've backed off a little bit to give myself a little bit of space and a little bit of breathing room. And now I'm sort of coming back to it with a fresh pair of eyes and seeing things that do work and seeing all the things that didn't work. And maybe a bit of a refocus, and I think that's probably where I am at the minute, after a bit of reflection. So yeah, it's good to see some new faces in. It's good to see some new names in. But it's always great to see people keep coming back week after week as well on the Monday chats. Christopher says, I wonder if the soup book for AOS Orcs will bump them up to top tier. It'll be interesting, won't it? Because it's going to be the latest hotness. It's the new faction. I just wonder whether it's enough. Orcs have never really been top tier, have they? They don't have a lot of options, which is one of the reasons why they've pulled it on this big soup. Ella says, what warband are you wanting to play the most? For me, it's the Corvus Cabal. And purely from the look and the theme of them, really. I like the way they're obviously going to kind of be flying around, I'd imagine. I just like that. I like the fact that they're not like anything else we've seen in AOS, or even within GW, really. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting them painted up and to giving them a try on the table as well. I played the Untamed Beasts when I played my demo games, and actually I enjoyed them more than I thought I would. They were quick, they were nimble, they got about the board, they could kind of jump around, weren't particularly they weren't too tough, but they had a few kind of heavy hitters in there that just meant that they held their own. So those are the ones I'm looking for. Those are the ones I'm kind of I'm looking forward to the most, I think. But as I say, I've got the core box, I've got Cypher Lords on order, so I'll be getting them this week. And then certainly when the other ones, the Unmade and my mind's gone blank. Whatever the other one is. Oh, it's the Splintered Fang, isn't it? The Splintered Fang look quite nice, actually. The kind of snake dudes. Quite like the models of them with the nets and things. So who knows? Who knows? Where are we at? Robbie's just saying that I think Warcry is a shift towards much faster games, which will be nice. Yeah, for me, that's perfect. I'd rather play 3 games in a night than play one long, drawn-out sort of 2-hour game. Because when you play bigger games, if you're in a game that's dragging on and you know you beat, that's quite frustrating to play that out. And by just saying, I've had enough, I'm not having fun here, it does your opponent out of the game as well. Like they might be getting fun out of it. So I'd rather play like 3 45-minute games of quick, like, right, let's go again. I got beat there, let's go again. I much prefer that, I think. Peter saying I'd be interested to see how warbands fare and Warcry. Reluctant RC saying I know you're not a bat rep fan, but how about just a fun game recorded for fun? I'm definitely going to try and do some bat reps for this. One of the reasons I don't enjoy doing them is because it's quite difficult. 1, to kind of get opponents who want to play on camera. 2, it's quite difficult to concentrate on the game and make sure the cameras are in the right place and everything's working and the sound and getting the rules right and all that kind of stuff. However, because Warcry is on a smaller board size and because it's a shorter player time, I'll probably give it a go. It might not be the most polished of kind of bat reps. I'm not going for kind of cinematic excellence. But you're right, I might just put a couple of ones just for fun, just to kind of show. I think people want to see the battle report, if you like, but I think they want to see people having fun as well, don't they? I mean, let me know in the chat, if you watch battle reports, what kind of battle reports do you like? Do you like to see the people on camera having fun? Are you just here to see the game play out and see the intense strategy and the tactics and see all of the dice rolls? What is it that interests you and keeps you watching them? Steve's saying, for Warcry, I'd like to see 30k wolves. Can't say that one out of mid. Michael Marines is in as well. He says, coming in kind of late, just wanted to say hi to everyone. Pre-ordered Warcry and can't wait to get stuck in. Well, buddy, thank you for joining the chat. Thank you for popping in. If you're not already subscribed, please do. There'll be more Warcry coming here. And I guess some people will be really focused on the kind of the fine details and the tactics of it. I think I'm going to be more focused on the fun side of the game. So looking at what's the lore, what's the background about the different races, what could we kind of sort of theorize about, what else could we see in the all points, or the 8 points as it's called now, I think. I'll be about, it's like some of the painting, some of the concept stuff, which about the fun side of it, I think, and about these kind of almost theoretical chats as well. So if you like that kind of stuff, please do subscribe. Peter, oh, sorry, I'm jumping around the chat there a little bit. Cardos is saying Corvus Cabal look amazing. Yeah, I think they're going to be my favourites, I think, purely from the look of them. Gene saying he likes the Crow Warriors too. Phil Hall says, will you be doing Let's Paint Warcry, as I'd like to see how to paint the Harpies and the Chaos Birds? Yeah, I've done quite a bit of painting stuff in the past. They're always aimed at beginner painters. I'm not the kind of... I'm not Angel Heraldez or anything like that. I'm not that kind of painter. I'll be doing some painting tutorials about how to get them on the board looking good as quickly as possible. Taking some shortcuts with things like washes and contrast paints and dry brushing. Just things that make them stand out and look better than average. But yeah, you won't win any awards with them. But yeah, I'll be doing some if you're interested in that. Where is Peter saying, I hope Warcry is as good as expected. Yeah, me too, mate. Tua is saying, after reading the anthology, I'd like to discuss the warbands a bit more and what the best strategy will be to play them. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the anthology too. I see one of the books from the anthology is available to buy on its own by digital copy tonight. But I'd rather wait till the weekend and get the big hardback version, I think, because it's got the full 6 stories in of the 6 warbands. Christopher says, Andy, are you not on GW's list for preview copies? Peter's saying, probably on a hit list. No, mate. As far as I understand it, Games Workshop don't even look your way until you've got 10,000 subscribers. So I've got quite some way to go yet. I've got I've got another 5,000 subscribers to go. Who knows? Maybe down the line, maybe if things take off with Warcry and stuff, they might start to kind of look my way a little bit. But no, not at the minute, mate. Tim's saying it's got to be fun. That's why we play it, isn't it? 100%, mate. 100%. Gene says, try a solo narrative game, Andy. A simple system like Rangers where you show the game but build a story around your Rangers. Like I say, mate, the narrative sides never really gripped me until Warcry, but there's something about this theme. Almost these kind of like small little warbands out in a bit of a barren wasteland. There was something that was said on the Stormcast podcast, which was not this one, the last one I think it was, where he said the people in the kind of in the 8 points are not necessarily evil. They're not necessarily bad people. They're just in a bad situation and they're having to fend for themselves and to kind of like just to survive, really. So, and there was something about that really kind of like gripped me and made me think, like, yes, this is about chaos and stuff, but these people are almost embracing chaos because they know nothing different. It's not that they're born evil, if you like. they're almost corrupted into chaos through lack of choice and through lack of options and through the situation they're in. There's something about the narrative of that I really think is quite clever. Where are we at? We're looking at Archie says there are 2 women from Newfoundland who have a couple of bat reps up. They just have fun and it's infectious. I watched one of those last night, actually. Literally 5 minutes of it just to see what it was like. And they do seem to be having fun. No doubt I'll steal some tips from them. Tim's saying some Warcry tactics and faction talks will be good. Cheers, mate. Adam says, I'll play you on camera. If you want to fly 26 hours around the world, mate, to have a game, you're more than welcome. Steve saying I watch bat reps for the narrative aspect or if I'm interested in picking up the faction to see if I'm interested in their playstyle or their nasty tech. How are we doing for time here? Oh, we're about a half past, but I'll finish some of this chat now and then we'll start to round it out at the end. Thank you to Marcus as well, who's just subscribed. Thank you very much, buddy. Robbie saying, have you thought about doing a video with some homebrew war brand ideas? I haven't yet, but maybe once we've got quite a few things out for them, and maybe once I've played it a bit, it might be nice to mix something up a bit there. Christian is saying, I like most bat reps as they help you learn the game. It's always great to see people having a good time, but I prefer static, calm bat reps. The camera in hand gives me motion sickness. It's good feedback, that, mate, actually, because I've been considering what's the best way to do some. Douglas is saying Sword and Steel is the channel. Yeah, if anybody is interested in Warcry, please do check them out. I think they've only been going about a month and they're over 1,000 subscribers already, so they're doing something right. Adam saying likes to watch bat reps where the players are having fun. I get bored with the statistician players. I like to hear a few laughs and crazy antics. I agree. Richard saying bat reps for me, 100%. They know the rules in depth, good looking board, fun had by the players. And he watches bat reps to learn the rules and be brought into a game. Douglas is saying the top table guys did a great job. Yeah, that's what happens when you work in a gaming store and you get to access the demo copies before everybody else gets their hands on theirs. You get to get some bat reps up early. I'm good about that. Where else we at as well? Horrid person saying the builder component is what hooks me. The most basic level, the old XCOM guys get better effects. The other part is a story told by what happens in the games, or better or worse. Alan says, not my channel, but I often play it on Skirmish, a miniature gaming channel. We go for fun. I'll check that out, mate. And with that, we're at 10:30 now, so I'm going to call it there, boys and girls. I've had a really, really good chat again tonight. Thank you again for everybody that come in. Thank you for all the new subscribers. Thank you to Alan Rogerson, who's a new Patreon tonight as well. If anybody else is interested in supporting the channel through Patreon, you can support me for just $2 a month, which helps to pay for all of the things like Warcry and cameras and lights and cables and sort of visits to gaming companies, all that kind of stuff. It all does help me. Yeah, thanks to all my existing Patreons. Thanks to all my my YouTube members here as well. Anybody that's got the little green names there, they are YouTube members, and thank you very much for your support. And thanks to every one of my 5,000 and whatever subscribers now. So there'll be a video up this week, which is the one about is Warcry 2 simple. Watch out for that one, and then we'll be back next Monday with another Monday night live stream. So thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you all next week.